Here's a quick crash course in how to set your rates as an independent consultant. My name is Zan. I'm a solo founder and product leader focused on the future of work. I'm going to walk you through 6 different pricing options. Most people, when they first become independent consultants, start by thinking about themselves when they were an employee or they had a job and what was their full-time salary. So let's, for the sake of round numbers, say you had $100,000 as a full-time salary. That equates to a rate of about $50 an hour. Most independent consultants will typically start with an hourly or like a cost plus pricing model for setting their rates. And typically what people think is, well, at a minimum, I want to make the same amount as my full-time salary. The key thing to remember, though, is if you want to make this same amount as your full-time salary, you can't charge the same rate. You actually have to charge more than that. The reason is because most people forget that there's a lot of costs that their company pays for outside of their paycheck. So above and beyond this $50 an hour, the company pays for benefits, they pay for office space, they pay for marketing, they pay for health insurance, they pay for business insurance. All of those costs are not baked into your $50 an hour rate, but they need to be once you become an independent consultant or a solopreneur. The other big thing that people forget when setting their rates is that you may not have consistent demand for the entire year. So you might only be working on client-facing projects for 9 out of those 12 months, at least in the first year. And so you might only be working 75% of the time. And so you need to set a rate that can help cover those other months when you're either selling or not actively working on client projects. So what that means is you actually need to set a higher hourly rate as an independent consultant than what you would to make the same amount that you would at a full-time salary. And that hourly rate at a minimum, if we just factor in, let's say 20% for benefits and costs, and then the fact that you're billable maybe 75% of the year, not the whole year, at a minimum, you are going to want to charge 1.5 times your hourly rate as a full-time employee. But some people choose to double that or even triple or more. So you can go higher than this if you want, but this is where it depends on the nature of the work that you're doing and how much your client is actually willing to pay. Now, cost plus is not the only pricing model. There are other ways of pricing your work. So I'll just run through a few of the other ones quickly. A second way of pricing your work is project-based. So in this case, you're just charging a fixed fee. It doesn't matter whether you spend 10 hours or 100 hours, or if you do the work or somebody else does the work, you just charge a fixed amount. The key here, this is good where the scope of the work is really well defined and really well known, because you don't want to get you don't want to set a fixed fee based on thinking the scope is one thing, and then it turns out the scope is fundamentally different. Another pricing model is called value-based pricing. This is harder to pull off, but it can be very beneficial to you if you can figure out how to do it. In this case, if there's a tangible value, if you can figure out what is the value that you're actually delivering to the client. So let's say you're producing $1 million of value for them. Well, then in that case, even if you're charging $200,000 for your services, it doesn't seem so bad because you're still leaving $800,000 of value for them. So if there's a way, whether you're doing sales or generating revenues or cost savings, if there's a way that you can figure out how much value you're bringing to the company, then you can position your pricing in relation to that value. A few other models to cover quickly. The retainer and subscription model is fairly straightforward. This is typically when there's a fixed monthly fee or a subscription. They sign up. Sometimes coaches will do this too, where you sign up for a few months and it's just a fixed monthly rate. In exchange for that rate, you get some repeatable service. Same thing with, if you're building actually a SaaS product, most SaaS products will use subscription models here as well. An interesting new model is called outcomes-based pricing. This is actually more possible now with AI, where rather than charging for your time, you focus on charging based on what is the end result the client is getting. So, you could take a percentage of the sale that the client is getting. This can be a little bit different than value-based in the sense that one, you can figure out different kinds of outcomes to set, and you could have a model where you only get paid when the certain outcome is achieved. Now, the last thing is you could do a hybrid model where you have some combination of these different pricing models. So you could start with a fixed fee, and then maybe there's an incentive in there for, based on a certain outcome, or based on if you actually achieve a certain result. So you can mix and match and combine some of these and get creative, but of course that's a more advanced technique. For most people starting out, cost plus or fixed fee or retainer should be a good starting point, and then hopefully over time you can move into more value-based and outcomes, or maybe even outcomes-based as you get more sophisticated, or even a hybrid model. So let me know if that was helpful. Happy to do a deeper dive on any of these if it's useful for people.